At 11 minutes after 7, it's time for State of the Nation. And this is where we look at matters within the nation and look at what kind of, whether we are healthy or not as a nation in regards to certain areas. Today, we would like to obviously highlight plunder and corruption that has been happening. In case you're joining us now, well, with me in studio, I have Honorable Caleb Amisi, Member of Parliament for Saboti, and Kipruto Arab Kira, Honorable Kipruto Arab Kira, Deputy Party Leader for ANC. And, well, we have been awash with lots and lots of news in regards to the kind of plunder that there have been in this country. And if we look at some of the headlines that we've been seeing, of course, we've been talking about billions. Cleaner gifted 26 million in Samburu looting. That's just one of them. How KRA crook stole 100 billion in 6 months. We've been talking about billions. Uhuru dilemma on cabinet graft probe. That is a Sunday. Nation dam scandal could stink for ministers. I mean, it's scandal after scandal. And we've been talking about billions. Jubilee 7 billion project collapses. That's the Galana Kulalu project. And if you try and just visualize how much is a billion is a million. You paid 21 billion for empty thicket. I mean, sometimes it literally gets to a point where it's laughable. Not because it is funny, but because you wonder who is fooling who. Power firm caught in 14 billion land scam. If you look at all these, they're all just looking at billions. So our newspapers, the media has been awash, highlighting and bringing to the fore all this money that has been plundered. Now, we are on day 2 of the summon by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to 107 company directors and top officials linked to the 63 billion scandal at the Aror Kimwarer multi-purpose dam in Elgeyo Marakwet County that saw more of them grilled, including Kerio Valley Development Authority MD David Kimosop, who has adversely been mentioned in the scandal. Let's just listen to a few more details from Grace Kuria before we continue with this conversation.
Riddle of 61 billion Kenyan shillings money pit at KPC, Kenya's biggest theft plot. Power farm caught in 14 billion Kenyan shillings land scam. How Uhuru's 2 billion got lost in the forest. And the list is endless, with the latest one being you paid 21 billion shillings for empty thicket. Scandal after scandal, and now pressure is mounting on President Uhuru Kenyatta to sack any of his cabinet secretaries mentioned in the myriad of scandals.
It is time that if any civil servant is mentioned in such issues, the best thing is let them step aside so that investigation can be done. If they are found not guilty, then they come back and continue their work. Because surely, I think right now we are in the news for all the wrong reasons.
Now this even as day 2 of grilling of various company directors linked to the 63 billion scandal at Aror and Kimwarel multi-purpose dams continued Wednesday with one of the directors who has been adversely named in this scandal, David Kimosop, the managing director, Kerio Valley Development Authority, appearing alongside about more than 10 other directors. At least 2 cabinet secretaries have been mentioned in the dam scandal. The grilling of some of the 107 listed directors continues here at the DCI headquarters in what has been termed as the second biggest scandal after the late 90s Golden Bag scandal. Grace Kuria, KTN News at the DCI headquarters, Nairobi.
All right, a quick reminder that you're welcome to participate in this conversation. You can do that via Twitter, and the hashtag is KTN Morning Express. You can also tweet at KTN News, or you can tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. And well, let me come to you, Honorable Kirwa. Again, just looking at the amount of money that has been lost or has gone round in circles, and we're talking about billions. I tried to literally just fathom and think how much 1 billion shillings is and what it can do. This country would be very, very far if this money was honestly used in its right form.
Well, I know in many vernacular languages, 1 billion is not in their vocabulary. But increasingly in Kenya now, it has become commonplace, such that if somebody steals 20 million, you almost want to lynch him for not doing the work well. Because people have come to believe that you have to steal in billions to make money, sense out of that particular money. Now, in terms of economic translation, if you are to look at the one in Gulalu, 7 billion could have easily raised about 10 million bags of maize, which would, at the current price, would be about 26 billion. So what you are doing is that by stashing away 7 billion, you are removing what could be called export compensation, about substitution, about 26 billion out of our economy. Now, a more broader issue is that when there is all this money in the economy, you have to hide it away because you don't want to declare it in good time. So you are starving the economy of possible resources, and therefore you are forcing us not to have money that could be in circulation. Now, what does it do? The government does not have money to operate. It goes, does domestic borrowing, and that sucks away money that Mama Mboga, SMEs would have borrowed, and it makes the cost of business so high in this country. The net effect, a lot of importation into Kenya.
Absolutely. Honorable Amisi, the question we had looked at earlier and the concern that despite the fact that if you went and withdrew money from your account, it's very easy for us to trace and know you withdrew this amount, you withdrew it on this day, you used this particular branch. In short, details and paper trail is there. Why is it so difficult for Kenya to have anybody answerable to this kind of corruption that we see?
Yeah, it's increasingly becoming difficult to fight this corruption. As much as corruption is a global menace, I think in these countries, we don't even call it corruption. I think this is just blatant theft of public resources. It's just clear theft. Corruption may be even practiced in even the most biggest economy, but I think where we are as a country, this is people engaging in daytime theft. It's a kleptomaniac society that we are seeing, and the way you've said, these are cartels. That's where you are not able to get to paper trails and find out, because it is institutions, all the institutions are involved, all the various officers are involved. It is a cartel system. And for you to defeat a cartel system, you have to destroy them. Most countries that have destroyed, even Russia was once under cartel regime. When the President Putin took over, he literally killed all the cartels. Now, we are not telling people to kill the cartels. We have an order, we have law.
Yeah.
But you cannot prosecute a cartel, in piecemeal, the way we are doing that, arrest so and so, get so and so, and the same people are still in the office. We need to be serious. We need to ask ourselves, for example, if you are in the office and you are told there's a snake in that office, will you still be sitting there? You'll get out first, find out, is it really, how big is it, whatever. Then you go back after realizing that either it was a hoax, it was not the snake or something, but you get out of the office first. So the first thing is that these people have mentioned, they needed to get out of the office, so that you give enough space for the investigators to actually either clear you, whether you are innocent, or get the evidence they want. But if you are being mentioned, you are going to record statements, and you are still sitting on the files that are supposed to be used as evidence against you. Really? Are we going to achieve anything? Are we going to get anything, anybody palpable?
All right. Honorable Kira, the back has to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And of course, the blame game has already begun in regards to this 21 billion that we are now staring at. And the question is, where does the back stop? Because we have CSs who are still in office. They've been adversely mentioned. We have, like now, the MD for the Kedrio Valley Development Authority is still in office, despite the fact that there has been absolutely nothing on the ground done, despite 6 billion shillings being released. The buck has to stop somewhere.
Well, I think corruption has now been institutionalized, such that possibly you are not dealing with individuals, you are dealing with institutions. And the first institutions that we need to put the back to stop there is the Treasury and the Central Bank. When all this money is being wired back and forth, where was the regulator, the Central Bank? Where was the Treasury when money is getting out of the office and getting into people's accounts? That is somewhere we need to know. And number two, we also need to know when we are doing all these investigations, can we have a catalog of the cases that we have investigated in the past? And we say, okay, we investigated Kafura 1 or NYS 1, NYS 2. These are the results, so that Kenyans get apprised of what is happening. Otherwise, if you ask Kenyans how many investigations have been done, we have lost the number.
Lost count, and
we've lost
track.
count, and we've lost track, and we don't know whether this is a charade to keep us busy so that some more corruption may be ongoing. More fundamental, it stops at the presidency. Uhuru Kenyatta, when he leaves term at the end of 2022 or mid-2022, he cannot absolve himself unless he takes drastic action against individuals whose names have been repeatedly
and now,
mentioned.
what action is that he should be taking right now as we speak? Because we should expect in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, there should be very, very adverse action that the president takes if the buck stops with him.
First of all, the ministers who have been mentioned should step aside immediately because it is within his purview. And you cannot say the president is helpless. Today, the president is as powerful as the president in 1963. He should tell those CSs to step aside. The CS Treasury should not be in office as we are talking, because you cannot be a custodian of state resources and you allow a lot of bleeding of our economy to the extent that we are in. He should be able to step aside. If he's not to blame, Miraria stepped aside, he came back. Kraitu stepped aside, he came back, because they were absorbed by the investigations.
Right.
Rotich should step aside. Let somebody else take charge. And then later on, if he is absorbed by the investigations,
he can always come back.
He can always come back or be reassigned another duty.
Okay, Honorable Amisi, do you agree that the president needs to fire? If we call a spade, really, it is to dismiss those people.
If we lose the fight against corruption, I will squarely blame it on the president. Why? We've given him the right environment. The president is sitting pretty. He has never, this is unprecedented times. We've never experienced such a calm, peace and tranquility.
And also support from...
And the support, that's why I'm saying it is a peaceful, it is the most powerful president in the world. No opposition whatsoever. In the aftermath of handshake, the president becomes the most powerful president we've ever had in this country. He is in the best position. Him himself has never been, entangled in this corruption as an individual. He's the best person to speak against corruption because himself has never been, associated with corruption. If we do not achieve in his tenure as a president of Kenya, I don't think we'll ever achieve this fight anymore. And it will increasingly become now upon the citizens to wake up. One day you'll find citizens in office of Rotich chase him away. I'm telling you, people are actually going to risk being jailed. People will risk being jailed just to make sure that they are saving the future generation. So when we reach at that point where the citizenry will be tired, and you'll find, some of these offices unmanageable, and that's the tool that the president has. We have the opposition that is supporting the war against corruption. We are in the first time there is no opposition whatsoever that has always been seen as an impediment to fight against corruption. But now here we are. Everybody agreeing that we take a chance as a country to fight this corruption. And the first step the president must do is to stop talking tough and acting tough.
Act tough.
Yeah.
And to use maybe the words of the ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi, we need to move from handshake to handcuffs. Honorable Kirwa, your party leader said that, but like you've heard from Honorable Amisi, that there is no opposition. Do you agree? I thought ANC is part of the opposition currently.
Well, there is still opposition, and let me remind my young brother here that even during the days of KANU, and I was a member of parliament for KANU for 15 years, we still stood as the loyal opposition within. because it doesn't really matter how many people raise a voice of concern. You can be the voice of reason. We may be only 3 members of parliament or 10 members of parliament, but you can still raise that. But technically, we still got official opposition. ODM, a party that he belongs to, is still official opposition. The only thing that is happening is that there is working relationship between their leader and the President of the Republic for purposes of achieving the agenda of national cohesion. Otherwise, opposition is still there.
But maybe
let me probably I put it like this.
Yes.
Can we have an ODM calling for a demonstration right now to remove cabinet secretary? No. That is the kind of opposition I'm talking about. You can never compare our scenario at this point in time and how it was during the NASA resist movement. It was totally different scenarios. If it was at that time that somebody like Kidero has been arrested, this town will be a no-go zone.
Are you saying,
the situations were quite different?
Are you saying that that is the only language that maybe government understands?
That is the language. You see, when you talk about opposition, it's not about coming to talk in a talk show like this, in a boardroom and trying to express your frustration. That is not opposition. Opposition is real. You have to oppose and demonstrate and, picket and amass and mobilize.
As a member of Orange Democratic Movement, you agree that there is no opposition. You're part of government.
The types of opposition a government needs is not the type that the ANC leader is doing on funerals, trying to, oppose the government from funeral platform, from church. That is not the kind of opposition we are talking about. If the ANC leader is really a man worth to be called an opposition leader, he should have called for a demonstration in Nairobi City, here in Uhuru Park, and say that we are not leaving this town until CS goes home. That is the kind of opposition we are talking about, not the ones that they say in a church service or a funeral. This is just everybody can talk about.
Do you agree that the only language that government understands is one of protest and one of civil disobedience?
Well, unfortunately, I think we've become a nation of impunity, because the truth of the matter is that opposition does not mean that you have to carry placards. Even by making a position different from that of government, in a civilized society, and I do hope Kenya is a civilized society, that is sufficient for purposes of making an imprint in the minds of Kenyans. And I think Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi is within his right to make a statement that is at variance with the position that majority of those in government hold.
And that's a good beginning, but the question is, does that translate to a push that would now ensure that government acts? Because at the end of the day, the reason or the prime purpose of opposition is to keep government in check. Now, the only way to keep government in check is, one, to voice like he did, but two, if that fails, there needs to be more pressure put on government. How do we put that pressure?
Well, I think I would rather we use all legitimate means, because you see the problem, Gitonga, is that this country was polarized before the handshake to the extent that people never minded if somebody died from the other side of the equation. And you could feel it was palpable. That
demonstration, I think
that is true, Honorable Kiro.
Demonstrations, if it is made by a very violent government, we see the lives of Kenyans that were lost, and we can never replace them. I still believe we are heading towards a civilized society, and we need to have a lot of restraint. Democracy is not about impunity. Democracy is about
that may be
restraint.
True, Honorable Kirwa, but when we look at the amount of money lost, can we translate this to lives? Because then, look at our health sector. There are people literally who are dying because our health sector is in dire straits, and this is because the money that was supposed to go into those health facilities is being used. So we are still experiencing death. We haven't escaped that.
I agree with you, Gitonga, but I think I've lived in a civilized society and I've acted in a civil way for 20 years as a member of parliament, and even the time I'm outside, I've been a member of civil movement. But if we come now to say demonstrations, violent demonstrations, because
they don't have to be violent. They don't have to be violent. They don't have to be violent.
But must you demonstrate as a leader?
The question is, how then do we pressurize government to act? Because evidently they don't seem to have the will to act on their own.
What we need to do is to translate our outrage into a vote in the next election, so that Kenyans can choose leaders they believe will be able to achieve better results for Kenyans.
Honorable Amisi.
I think Honorable Kirwa is generally scared of anything called demonstration. You know, demonstration, Mheshimiwa, does not necessarily need to be bloody or violent.
But tell
France,
me one that
really,
has not been...
let me
no,
finish.
in Kenya,
Let me give you an example.
Yes.
You know, we are not... We are,
Don't go to France, we are in Kenya.
We are living in a global society where we learn from each other. There are advanced democracies, even US, even UK. People demonstrate, even German, even France. We had what we call the yellow. And they were pushing for government to act on increasing fuel and, you know, putting the burden on the citizenry. These are things that happen all over, and they are allowed in any constitution. This is just a measure that we've tried to speak at funerals, we've tried to speak on any platform we have, but things seems to be, you know, improving. So let's use another tool. Another tool is demonstration, and demonstration is perfectly allowed. It has to be orderly. You can arrange yourself in an orderly, you know, manner, but that is raising stakes of your opposition. That now we've reached a point where the people, we must go to the street, we must picket, we must show the government that the citizen, because people might think the citizens are okay with these things as they're happening. So we must pull up our socks in terms of opposition. If you are to have an opposition worth its salt, you must pull up your socks. That's why I said we cannot talk about this scenario having an opposition. An opposition is real, my friend. It's real.
Okay.
No, well, I think we are dealing with question of semantics. Now, I challenge you. You can even demonstrate when you are in government. Today, you are not in government. You are in the opposition. You are a member of parliament of ODM in the opposition. Your party leader can deal with the president, but deal with the demonstrations. I will join you in that demonstration.
You will be scared.
No, I'm not scared. All right, and Honorable Amisi, now that we've brought that on board, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has been very vocal in matters to do with corruption, especially before the handshake. And vocal here meaning when the government didn't act, he would stand up and say, we are going to do A, B, C, D. Do you think that this handshake has somewhat compromised the fight on corruption? From that front?
Yes, we cannot say it as compromise. You know, the handshake, actually, what were the 9-point agenda of the handshake? One was to fight corruption. So by the former Prime Minister coming to join hands with the President, one agenda was to help each other fight corruption. So it was to create a climate, and you've seen him even talk about this even yesterday. He actually demanded for ministers to step aside. That is speaking from his position as a very respected leader internationally. So his coming together was not to really derail the fight against corruption, but to even give it more impetus. And you can see people, I mean, it was unheard of that some people will be arrested even from the opposition. If it was during the pre-handshake times, I mean, this town will not be passable. If somebody was, like Kidero was to be arrested during that time of Nasser resistance, my friend, this town will not be passable. So you can see the climate that the handshake has created. It is conducive enough, more conducive than before, to fight corruption. So I think his coming together with President was a masterstroke. It actually added a lot of,
but
energy.
Do you feel that momentum is still there? Because you've said it yourself that there is no opposition.
Yes.
So he was seen as the voice of the opposition.
Yes.
Do you still feel that he is seen as the voice of the opposition?
He still as the voice of the opposition. He has spoken to the ills, the bedevil of this country in many occasions. And he only used a different approach to what he has been, perennially
you've just
been
said that the only language that government would understand right now is maybe in form of civil disobedience.
Yes, and that's now from where I sit. I don't think that this language of just talking in conferences, in rooms and that will have to solve anything. I think we have to reach a time where the citizens must be mobilized. If some of us will be the voice of opposition, so be it. And I said some people are even ready to be arrested to break laws so that we can solve the problems of these countries once and for all. You walk to the minister's office and say, hey, you are all over news. You've done this. Please get out of the office. It will be done. If one minister is chased by the citizenry from the office, the rest will be scared. That is where we need to go as a country. Where we are is beyond reproach.
All right, Honorable Kira, we are now winding up. Maybe I'll give you an opportunity. I think you both agreed that the buck stops with the president.
Yes.
If you are the president's advisor, what advice would you give him?
Well, I would advise him to listen to Musalia first. And upon listening to Musalia, he would be able to fire 1 or 2 ministers. And he will also be able to ask the central bank, when all these banks report to you that there is some kind of transaction that is not normal, what have you done? Including the issue of the terrorists. That fellow was dealing with a lot of money with a bank that was connected to Dusit, and yet, if it was reported, nobody did anything at the central bank. Number 3, what the president needs to do is to abandon the other 4 items of the agenda and make corruption his main item.
Point of focus.
Point of focus, because once corruption is stopped, all that money will come back to address the issue of food security, the issue of healthcare, the issue of infrastructure, and many other issues that this country is suffering from. Finally, I will tell him the economy is bleeding. And if he doesn't watch, in the next 3 years, we'll be raising almost 90% of the revenue that we are going to be collecting will be going back to paying debts.
All right, Honorable Misi, if you also agree that the buck stops with the president, what advice would you give him if he gave you the privilege of becoming his advisor?
If he gives me the privilege, and I hope he does it sooner than later. I will advise him to, first of all, just call for a major conference and announce that all the ministers who have been implicated in corruption steps aside to clear their names, and not just ministers, all the public officers who have been implicated in corruption steps aside and appoints maybe his juniors to take over or other people to take over. That is an immediate effect. And probably to even put a halt to some of the projects that have been undertaken, because these projects have been marred by a lot of corrupt practices since their inceptions, and they need to be halted so that they are reassessed afresh. And I think there is so much money that have been channeled towards these projects, either exaggerated figures, because if you look at the cost of that dam, you are wondering, what was it? Was it to supply the whole Africa with whatever? With what? So you are left imagining what was the rationale of giving all these huge sums of money to a single project, while other areas like where I've come from, people are struggling to even have a road passing to the market. So why have all these huge sums of money in one single project? And was there even public participation before some of these projects were undertaken? And remember, we are grappling with huge external loans.
Debts.
Our budget this year will be, 3 trillion. And it's just half of it is to pay debts. I mean, look at all this money that have been lost. This money is just enough to clear our debts once and for all, and we go back to our normal life. And if we are increasingly becoming a nation that will depend on debts that are that we borrow and steal, I started by saying this land was not, we never inherited this land from our forefathers. We have borrowed it from our future generations, and it is incumbent upon us to return it with interest.
All right, thank you very much. That's a good place to close. That's Honorable Caleb Amisi, Saboti, Member of Parliament, and Kipruto Arab Kira, Deputy Party Leader, ANC. Thank you for joining us on State of the Nation this morning. It's now 20 minutes to 8 o'clock. We take a short break.